Richard.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much for joining. This is our first recorded AI Mind Meld interview. As you know, you joined us to visit the group. We've been meeting weekly as a casual group. And
Hmm.
I've had various people come in and out, and the request has started coming up over and over for more expertise than I could give. Because the Mind Meld was really started as a sharing group, just to see where's everybody at, what's the temperature, what are the fears out there among the creatives in my audience and my circle of folks, of designers and graphic designers and industrial designers. And yeah, so we ran for about 3, 4 months every week, and I learned a lot. And I wanted to start getting other people in who have a lot more information than I do. And as I started checking into some of your talks and your videos, I realized that you have a lot. There's a ton, and we could talk about a lot of things.
Well,
So,
and one of the things that was exciting for me coming on your Mind Meld back then was I'm immersed in this development side of this equation. The tech giants and the hype cycle and all of this part of it.
yeah.
Don't see the different verticals, the different spaces that people are exploring in. So for me, I don't know if you recall that I didn't say much for the first hour
Right.
because I just wanted to see where people were at, like,
Yeah.
and that are not working in computing every day, that use these computers as their tools to do their job rather than it being the job.
Yeah.
And then there was a conversation later on, just because there is some conjunction of way people perceive things and sort of the problems that we're having using these names and how we've approached this technology this time around,
Yeah.
exacerbating some issues.
Yeah, we'll talking about some of those today.
Mhm.
But you're not the first person that I've talked to. I have another guest that will be coming on who works with agents. And he said the same thing. He said, I just want to come in and see. I've been working on agents for so long. For him, it's been a few years. He's younger. But he's like, but I
Mhm.
don't know what it's like for on the front lines for people and
Yeah.
how they're using it. And so you get disconnected from that. So I want to talk a little bit about that today and thinking about some of the people that will watch this and that are in the audience. Um, the focus I wanted to come into is AI and creatives because there's so much fear out there. And I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about everything is changing so rapidly. Every day I pick up new news. I was reading new things this morning just before this podcast that I put in the notes. And I was thinking about, my background is in apparel design, but before that, in the 80s, I started learning graphic design and I was doing, analog, like paste up and layout kind of hand,
Hmm.
stuff. And I didn't end up going in that direction right away, but in the late 80s to the early 90s, that was still the way you do it, wax it, cut it, paste it up. But by the time I got into an industry, Adobe Illustrator and the whole .com had happened. So
Hmm.
I went to school later on in the late 90s for my apparel design degree. And that coincided with like when I started the degree, we were hand drawing and hand making everything. And by the time my program finished, they were putting in computers and just introducing Adobe Illustrator and all
Right.
of that. So I was that Gen X analog even in school. And so I walked out of it and I had a partner who also was part of the early.com. So I learned Illustrator a little bit from him as well. So by the time I got into the apparel industry, everything was getting digitized. We were on email, we were joining LinkedIn, like all of that was just starting in the early 2000s and starting to blow up for us. And that was a transition that I felt like I just fell into and rode that wave. And so it was a change for a lot of other people, but it wasn't a big change for me. It just happened. Um, then now we're going through a different change where we're having a shift of cultures, of generations, of everything in the world, and we're going through something that people are saying is bigger than the dot com boom. And I wanted you to come here to translate, that what AI is and what it
Hmm.
isn't,
Mm.
to help people, especially folks like me who have gone through the dot-com boom, but we just kind of, I think a lot of us just rode that wave and
Yeah.
it wasn't a huge, like, you were part of it early on. So I
Yes, it
wanted
was.
to I wanted to talk about that first. Your first line of code, you said 1977.
Yeah.
And so you are part of that whole thing. Tell us a little
Well,
bit about that early.
arguably, I'm a generation zero in personal computing because that was a very, very early time. You
Yeah.
mostly were building our own machines. Um, the commercial machines are coming later. And my father was an electronic engineer, so
Okay.
I learned to solder in the single digits. So that was never a big deal to me. And I've always had a strong hardware background, which served me very well as software became more dominant and we were dealing with scaling problems. So
Mm,
by the time the dot-com boom comes along, I'm in my late 20s, and I have been working in computers now for more than a decade, making a living.
mm,
And so the scaling problems of adding so much more machinery as the internet appeared into the public mythos. When I was a teenager, the internet was purely academic.
mm-hmm,
And so
mm-hmm.
for us young hackers, it was about stealing access into accounts to get on the internet. It
Yeah.
wasn't a public product. And
Yeah.
we would dumpster dive at the universities to get passwords because they were printed on paper,
Oh
because
my God.
a lot of people didn't even have screens at that point. You're mostly using line printers for things.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's a long
It's
time
still
ago.
very physical. You're stealing passwords physically on
Physically by
pieces of
going through
paper
pages of paper, yeah.
in the trash.
And I literally, those are, I still have those friends like 40 years later.
Wow.
We still see each other. And we've all gone into different careers and so forth. But
Mm-hmm.
the dot-com boom, because it's now 25 years ago, I think we are a little more poetic about it. It looked way more intentional than it actually was. It was an accident, it was a weird conjunction of events. It wasn't the internet becoming a publicly available product. That didn't kick it off.
Yeah.
The Gartner hype cycle talks about a technological trigger, and the technological trigger for the dot-com boom was the IPO of Netscape, because
Mm-hmm.
that was the
Mm-hmm.
first time investors saw the idea of a fully digital product.
Yeah.
This idea that Netscape was making a piece of software that allowed you to utilize the internet, that software was now going to be free to distribute. You didn't have to manufacture CDs and mail them out. And when there was a correction, have to make a new set of CDs, like all of that overhead.
Oh my
Now
gosh.
you just download the new versions. And so the money that poured in for that potential became a distorting force. You
Mm-hmm.
get to a point where there's more money than you can reasonably spend or reasonably understand. You kind of are forced into making bad choices, because the one thing an investor won't allow you to do is not spend the money.
Yeah.
The only way to
Yes.
make more money is to put it to work. And so you quickly run out of good ideas and start working on bad ideas. And
Yeah.
that happened in a span of just a few years. I mean, obviously, some important products you remember today, like Amazon, came from that,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
many of them appeared and disappeared in the span of just a few years.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, the part that most people don't know about the dot-com boom, like what's the most important thing that came from the dot-com boom, it was actually the expansion of the undersea cable network.
Right. We were
As
talking about that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, as the more people wanted to be online, as more people signed up for AOL, as the more people got into these accounts, bandwidth became the problem, and connecting things together became important.
Yeah.
And because everyone wants to keep the investors engaged, you keep projecting these straight lines up, 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 up. And
Yeah.
so when you start projecting growth 5 years out in those crazy lines, it's a huge amount of bandwidth. And so the orders went out to lay so much cable uh, with partial payments and borrowed money and so forth. And then by
Uh-huh.
2001, many of those companies were gone, and the cables got laid anyway because they were already spent on. And a lot of them ended up dark. I have friends who literally worked for 20 years finding dark fiber, stuff that was put in and never
Wow.
used. And I had a buddy who maintained a map of all the endpoints that he'd found from data centers that would find connectors that weren't connected to anything, and then you try to find the other end. Sometimes it was down the street, sometimes it was in the next city, sometimes it was across an ocean.
Oh
You
my
didn't
God.
know.
Are they, I mean, okay, are they doing this now
It's
still?
mostly the lifespan of a lot of those cables is about 20 years. So this
Okay.
is mostly ended now. But the reality is you wouldn't even want to use a lot of those old cables anymore. Modern cables are so dramatically
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
So
So,
today we talk about over a terabit of traffic through a single fiber cable. So
well, I
it's
loved
just a different league.
when you mentioned that because you've talked about that the infra because it's basically we're talking, business comes in and sees opportunity, money,
Yes.
infrastructure gets built,
Yeah.
right? And then
Well,
things is
first you show product potential, right? And you see the opportunity space. People get excited about things. And then the websites crash because there's too many users. Like, I know marketing people who sort of plan in the crash because, that's also hype. That's also excitement.
yeah,
And so as that begins to happen and you're starting to make the next round of investment and you're going to need that much more money, you're going to need that much more bandwidth, that's where
yeah,
these crazy growth shapes come from. And I,
yeah.
and I talk about that because we are in another hype
Well,
cycle.
that's what I wanted to bring up is how much of this is wasn't necessarily where I was going to go here, but I think I want to go here is
Mm.
um how much of that is happening now because you see and it's happening seems like it's happening faster and because of how slow like you're talking through the 80s through the 90s when all of this stuff is slowly building up starts to catch on we get the dot-com boom bust
Yeah,
now that AI is coming on which has been building too but now it's becoming really popular and everyone doesn't want to miss the bandwagon based off
sure.
of .com. So how much of that is
But
speed happening again and speeding up?
the question is it really been 20 years since another boom cycle? Like a bunch of things happened after the internet bust. I mean, the internet didn't go away, obviously.
Hmm.
We had a couple of darker years, and then we grew out of that. The next wave after that is actually mobile, right? iPhone comes along in
Hmm.
2007, and the App Store, and that's a whole lot of crazy. Although it's not as massive, it doesn't have that destructive cycle that as much as bankruptcies and so forth that occurred out of that one. And then you could argue cloud, same thing again, another big
Mm.
surge in expense and marketing and enthusiasm around there.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't do it. So the real question you have to ask is, why are we boom busting on this one when we've
Yeah.
had other big new technologies appear that are very important and are shaping the world? What's different about this one?
I'm going to ask you that. Now, I want to talk about what AI is in a little bit,
Sure.
shortly, but why do you think?
Well, I think, and you hit on an important part. Part of the problem is the name, right? Like artificial intelligence is an old term. It was coined by a group of scientists in the 50s to get money from the military, which they succeeded in doing. So, I often remind folks, this has been a marketing term. It doesn't show up in the public until 2001: A Space Odyssey, until Kubrick makes his film. And then Hal tries to kill everybody. Like we science fiction has programmed us to think we know what artificial intelligence is.
Yeah.
That's what makes it such a bad name because people think they know what it is
Yeah.
because they've
Yeah.
seen it in movies. After Hal, it becomes Terminator, and after Terminator becomes Ultron, like
Yeah.
over and over and over again. Makes for great movies. It's not what we're building.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've tagged on to a term for a different technology, and that misconception helps generate enthusiasm that may not be entirely deserved. I'm not saying this technology doesn't have potential. It does. Is it that crazy? No, not really. A lot of that is science fiction. We'll have to work through the potentials.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
piece of this is why the hype cycle, like why so much money, why so much enthusiasm. And part of
Yeah.
that is this reality distortion field around the term. But part of it also is other incentives like growing infrastructure.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes. And we're seeing a lot of results. I mean, like when I heard that when you said it's a marketing term, there's something about that releases it feels that releases a lot of pressure. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
I'm,
okay, I
I'm
can
trying to take the voodoo out of this, right? Like that's what concerns me is
yeah.
there's so much voodoo.
Yeah, and when the people put the voodoo back in, we're so primed from these films and the storytelling. That was something that, I see as you're a storyteller as well,
Mhm.
versus, telling a good movie or the things that people want to pick up on YouTube and TikTok. Um, Finding the real stories behind things, you
Yeah.
know?
It doesn't make a good movie if you build a new technology and it helps everybody and things are better. That's kind of a dull movie. You need conflict. You need a crisis. Like, that's why we don't talk about it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, yeah. This is the grounding aspect that I wanted.
Yeah.
It was like Richard's here to ground us in reality, and I think there's something that we need in that piece. And you've been talking, traveling all over the world, talking about this. Are you finding that it's helping people when you
Yeah,
do this?
absolutely. And remember, my normal audience is software developers. And
Mm.
so, the strongest part of my message is how we use these tools matters. Now, that's always been true, right? Like, I occasionally will go all the way back to talk about like Gutenberg's press, which was
Yeah.
widely panned as a terrible product at the beginning, right? And of course, the first successful book that Gutenberg printed was the Gutenberg Bible. But the second popular book that was printed was How to Identify Witches and Burn Them. So, you can
Oh my
take any
gosh.
technology and do terrible things with it.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Yeah. And
it's part of that whole message is understand what these tools actually are,
mhm.
use your moral compass to build appropriate things with them that they'll be effective at, that they will be beneficial for, and they can
Yeah.
make the situation better, not worse.
Yes, the moral compass is a piece that I follow the Morning Brew news, and today they had a post that talked that just popped up. A bunch of AI experts and stuff, Anthropic, OpenAI, people are quitting, people are leaving, and
Mhm.
somebody's like putting up, like sending up another flare. And I think somebody who just recently left, so head of safeguards research at Anthropic, said, throughout my time here, I've repeatedly seen how hard it is to truly let our values govern our actions. We
Sure.
constantly face pressures to set aside what matters most. And that seems like that's what I've been writing about is it's not AI, the tool, it's humans and our
Yeah.
fear of, how other people are using it, how we're being forced to use it, anything.
Well,
Yeah.
and we get back to that perverse money incentive that at a certain amount of money, you can't not make bad choices. Like you have so much pressure. You've promised so much for the next tranche and the next tranche and the next tranche that finally you have to cast all limits aside to try and achieve an unachievable thing at
Yeah.
whatever risk it might be.
Yeah.
And that's the concern. And the pressure's going up because the promises have gotten so extreme that now it's becoming ridiculous. Like people
Mm.
can sort of see this makes no sense. They can't possibly have these kinds of returns. So at
Hmm.
some point, the money is going to stop. And investors don't move away from a technology, they flee. The money will drop abruptly. And if you're not profitable at that moment, if you haven't got cover, you're not going to make payroll. It's going to happen we saw this in 2001,
Yeah.
right? In fact, I am sitting in an Aeron chair that I got half price, at a bankruptcy sale for a startup company in 2001 that never opened. They ordered the chairs. They never actually started business, and so they were all sold off.
The Aeron
You know, the,
chair is the symbol of
the
it
symbol of
too.
the dot-com boom, 100%. By the way, excellent chair. Like
Yeah.
I'm nothing to complain about. Got it for a great price. And by that same token, people say like, when this AI bubble ends, what happens? It's like, well, I think GPUs are going to get cheaper. But
What's what's the artifact we get to walk away with from this one?
well, now we talk about the real thing that's going on, which is that the building of data centers is the
Yeah.
driver. And
Hmm.
it's part of the distortion because the tech giants, like we've been in now for 15, 18 years, the creation of a new utility. There's only a few utilities in civilization, right? Clean water, sewage, electricity,
Yeah.
internet, and now computing.
Yeah.
And there's a race essentially to say who is going to be a permanent part of civilization. It's going to be the utility compute. And really, there's only been three competitors. It's Amazon, Microsoft, and Google.
Yeah.
And all of them pre-pandemic were struggling to build data centers because data centers aren't very popular. They take up a lot of space, they consume a lot of power, they're noisy,
Yep.
and they don't pay a lot of taxes because they don't actually employ that many people.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so,
Right.
you know, pre-pandemic, there was a lot of conversation about struggling to make data centers. And then the pandemic happened and everything got weird because there was a lot of move to the cloud. So there's a lot more demand and that loosened some things up. And then the AI wave came and uh, it was OpenAI in 2020 that published a paper called The Open Neural Laws. It really went against what everybody else has ever talked about in machine learning. Like machine learning's traditional models that's using neural nets is that you build a training set and you train this model up to a certain point. If you overtrain it, it'll only be good on the training set. It won't be good on regular data.
Mm-hmm.
You only
Mm-hmm.
train it up to a certain point. In the 90th percentile is excellent, and that's as good as these machine learning models can be.
Mm-hmm.
And what the language neural laws paper said was train it on absolutely everything, overfit to the nth degree. And if you make the model big enough, it'll become intelligent. It's something, it'll hockey stick up in capability.
Which means data centers.
It's the excuse, right? But you
Oh,
understand, it doesn't matter whether it's true. It's a great reason to build more data centers. Now, at the same time, we were making bigger models that did produce more capability,
yeah.
right? OpenAI was founded on the back of pulling scientists out of Google Brain to do AI in the open right up until it started working. Then they
Mm-hmm.
kind of locked it all down again. And, you'll have to buy it through them. And Microsoft got involved and the data center drive started to really fly. But,
Right. Right.
and again, I have a lot, I'm not presuming bad intent on everyone's part here. There are perverse incentives. It's solving an important problem for the big tech giants. They need more data centers to extend that lead so that they
Mm-hmm.
will be part of utility computing for the foreseeable future. And this
Mm-hmm.
was a way to unlock that. There is potential in this software that as we grow it as quickly as possible, uh, we see new capabilities. But there's no way, the problem here is there's no need for efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger is better because bigger demands more data centers, and it seems to be working. Just keep growing. Like when DeepSeek came out, and it was a smaller model that also got good results, you would have thought that would have had people step back, and go, "Huh? Do we really have to be bigger, or could we be more efficient?" And
Yeah.
for the most part, they went, "Nah," because more data centers,
Yeah.
and they've kept
Right.
growing.
It's
Now, I mean,
race.
GPT-5 also is a bit more optimized, and they're pushing that way. But interesting thing happened when GPT-5 came along is that they tried to turn off all the other models that
Right.
OpenAI was running
Right.
because there was going to be more efficient because it cost them less to operate. They are getting more efficient. But people got upset because they also stripped a lot of the obsequiousness out of
Yes.
GPT-5.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
and Altman gave in and put 4.0 back up, and you got those crazy messages about people getting their baby back. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
software. Like, there's a whole other crisis around this. But
That,
and just recognizing the set of incentives that are moving us in this direction have very little to do, actually have nothing to do with building a super intelligence. Like we don't know how to do that. There's really no way to it. But most of the scientists that aren't under financial incentive are pretty clear about saying, hey, these generative AI models, as powerful as they are, and they are powerful, they don't lead to this.
mm-hmm.
That's not where
Mm-hmm.
they go. You know, these models are so powerful, we've already forgotten what they do. Right? You now take for granted that you can take a picture with your phone and your phone will tell you what's in the picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
15
Yeah.
years ago, that was impossible. Today, it's in every phone.
So when you talk about superintelligence, and you've talked about this in your talks, which are
Yes.
we'll link to when I post this, is they're wonderful. I've listened to a couple of them multiple times, and that's what people are afraid of. Like that's what's
Yes.
the fear
And
of
again,
this
that's
super
science
intelligent.
fiction,
Right.
right?
But then like you were saying in the talk, there is incentive for, say, Sam Altman or or Mark Zuckerberg or somebody to say, we've achieved it, right?
Right.
AGI
They
or
need to because they've also been recruiting on the back of it. right? Like literally, apparently, not that I've ever been there, the chant inside of OpenAI is AGI, AGI, AGI.
Wow.
Like this is how they bring these best minds together, is we're going to make this thing. You'll notice they're now leaving because they're finding out actually we're here
Yep.
to make money. But the folks that truly believe in the science, that want to create the remarkable thing, the Demis Ballots of the world and so forth over at DeepMind, that's what they started out doing.
Yeah.
And then realized actually we could do so much more good working on other things, and are trying to do that as well. And in the
Okay.
meantime, the CEOs have made promises to investors they cannot deliver on.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I mean, and I've said this in my talk, Sam's going to have to call something an AGI at some point, or he loses his job.
What's it gonna do to everybody?
Yeah. The
All of
question is,
us.
what will it be, and is it useful?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but it's none of the science fiction things.
Okay. Well, that'll lead us right into now what I want to talk about, because is what is AI? Um, I I think you had some great description in your talk. One of the biggest things that helped me was when I took a free course a couple years ago from MIT, and a couple things on LinkedIn initially, which described what it was, and
Hmm.
showed the model, and it just completely shifted it all for me, and gave me
Yeah.
a foundation of, oh, it's just this.
It's just this. One of the ways I've described this to non-technical people, especially, is it is a mechanism for consolidating the data the same way that JPEG makes images smaller.
Okay.
So if you take your nice, beautiful Canon SLR camera with its high sensitive sensor, and you shoot in RAW, right, which is like a huge image, right, 3 gigs, too difficult to work it, but absolutely perfect, exactly what's in that image.
Hmm.
JPEG that image to make it small enough to actually be usable is a lossy compression of it. We're going to take away some of the detail and so forth. It still looks like the picture. It still looks good. It's not as precise as the old one, but it's there. We've been battling this problem for decades of way too much data. We have huge amounts of data. We
Hmm.
haven't been able to process them. And in a way, building a neural net is like building a lossy compression form of all of that data. And so now you can query against it. You can make requests of it, and it will pull out a somewhat lossy response, which can at least get you on a path to knowledge. It may not be accurate because it is compressed. So it's good to go
Ah,
back and look at the original facts under it.
yeah, it's
But
missing information.
yeah, because in order to make it work, it had to compress that information
Yeah.
effectively. Now, it's not actually compression, and neuroscientists will yell at me for this, but I found it to be a way that folks appreciate that. You know what a JPEG image is. You know that it has artifacts in it, that it does damage to the image to some degree. Now, think about that for text, because that's essentially what we're talking about here.
Hmm.
It's damaging the text to process it down into that form,
Mm.
but it's still useful. And as long as you don't count on it for facts, or you validate those facts another way, you can get useful outcomes from it.
Yeah, there's another piece where people have been saying, like, making quotes, like, it's finding the average of something in all human
Right.
knowledge, right? And
Yeah.
like, I was hearing lots of people talking about creative work, music, interviews, talks with people where it's like, well, all of human knowledge isn't documented on the internet.
For
So
starters. Yeah.
it can't
And
access everything that's living in your head or your closet or your experiences in your memory, right?
but it's also why, if you go back to science fiction and talk about, well, what happens with the super intelligence, it starts learning on its own and accelerates
Yep.
away from anything that we can possibly do. But once you recognize it's a lossy model, it can't do that. It can only degenerate. The information it
Yeah.
produces when trained against will be worse,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a photocopy of a photocopy,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right?
So I'm going to ask a stupid question, which is, what do you think of, maybe it's not a stupid question, but what did you think of Moltbook when that jumped out and everybody freaked out about it?
I mean, I think it's funny in that sense, right? In the end, you have to avoid conveying intentionality to software it has none, right? You are ultimately directing it to spew text into that environment. And so it will spew text in an environment it was told to. what its views will be in association to what else you've interacted with. So it's only your interactions that are ultimately generating all this text. It may not be the text that you expect, but that's because you don't know everything that's in the model in the first place.
Did you go on it and check any of it out when it
Oh,
popped up?
absolutely, yeah. And and
I saw
and
some
and just
interesting stuff.
giggled, like, wow,
Yeah.
we can really munge a lot of words around, can't we?
Yeah. Yeah. We saw
And
one.
again,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. What you're going to say is
it's
more.
like you stop putting intentionality to this because there is none,
Yeah.
right? Like it
Yeah.
does not have intent. It's just software.
It feels like a little circus just to kind of distract everybody over here or
Yeah,
test things out to see what would happen, right? In real time, but or publicly, I would say.
yeah.
Um, I when I think about because I want to get into the creative side of things.
Hmm.
Um, what what do you think most people like? Because we've talked a little bit about how um, well, what do you think most people misunderstand about AI with all the people that you talk to outside maybe of the developer realm, but kind of the layperson? Is there something that you see or notice that is more common that people misunderstand of what AI is from, beyond just not knowing what it is?
Yeah.
What
Well,
do
and
you think
again,
it
it
is?
being called artificial intelligence, then they tie it into their experience with science fiction,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Again, it's this name has problems, and so people have some thoughts around it. The humans are really have a challenge with anything that presents language, right? They have a challenge with parrots or any corvid, like the fact that they
Oh,
produce words.
interesting.
There's
Yeah,
some.
yeah.
It's it's deeply embedded in our minds that if you can chain noises that become language together, there's intelligence there. And
Hmm.
so we put intelligence in the name, and then we also chained words together. And so, ta-da! You're perceiving something that's not there. Again perceiving an intent or something
Yeah.
going on per se. And really,
Oh.
it's just a word regenerator, right?
It's
It's a good one.
interesting, yeah, because as soon as you mention the military at the beginning, it's like as soon as you start thinking of intelligence and you're thinking of data information,
Hmm.
right? That's
Yeah.
what I started to think.
Well, and the tool that McCarthy and Minsky worked on for the U.S. military was a logistics engine, which, by the way, worked phenomenally. The United States military to this day is the best projector of logistics in the world. Like they did build useful tools for them at the time,
Hmm.
and that's something that this kind of software is particularly good at. You
Yeah.
know, when you think about the traditional brainstorming ritual that a creative goes through, it's almost a checklist, right? You kind of get yourself into a state where we're going to open as many doors as possible to try things. These kinds of checklist behaviors is stuff this software is great at.
Yeah.
It remembers all of the details, right? It
Yeah.
pulls all those things in. It connects as many dots together as it can because that's what the language model does.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it can't be original by definition, but those connections are more the connections than we can make as humans. We're more bound than these tools are. They've largely indexed the entire internet. Now we know that's not the sum of all human knowledge, but it's still a lot of stuff. Now you're hoping they left the worst bits out. Like I hope 4chan's not in there. But but it also means that often it can produce connections that you haven't made the leap of yet. But
Yeah.
ultimately, when you see it, it's your reaction to it that is the leap.
Yes, and that's where it was like I was realizing as we are talking about all kind of the technical piece, the business side, all of this what side of the brain leaping over to the human side is
Right.
always it's such a weird place, and it's I love existing there, but I don't always have the words for it. But like when I was listening to your talk and you were talking about what the early what was it, Eliza,
Yes.
where they,
Rosenbaums.
and that's an early like talking with the with basically a
And a
chat.
very simple piece of software. Like part of Rosenbaum's whole point in making that was like, look at how simple this is, and yet it engages you,
Yeah,
right?
that was
This
what
is
got me.
yeah,
You were
this is the
saying,
human.
yeah, this is like, and you were saying how long people spent time with it.
Yeah.
that it draws you in and you want to keep going.
Sure. And
And
it's in software, especially, we often have we get stuck on problems, right? We call it
mhm,
thrashing. And so one of the, part of your executive function is to recognize when you're thrashing on a problem, like you're not making progress, you're just wasting time on it. And so then in software, especially, we call it rubber ducking. Go explain the problem to the rubber duck, right? One of the most popular sites
wow.
when you're a software developer used to be, until ChatGPT's kind of blown this up for them, was a place called Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow, you could ask a technical question and experts would answer it. But the process of crafting a good question in Stack Overflow is arduous. It's complicated. They won't let you just throw, like, why doesn't this work? You really have to explain the problem well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Every single time I've ever done on a Stack Overflow, the process of writing it out answered it. Rubber ducking is about going into a narrative on your problem, which makes you think about it differently.
Yeah.
This is something that these LLMs are phenomenal for. The process of describing the problem to the tool allows your mind to think through the problem better.
Yeah.
And then the responses from the tool can also press on those same thoughts.
So one of the things that I had mentioned that I talked about in the AI mind meld was the vibe coding difference between typing out an answer versus
Mhm.
talking. And when my colleague was saying, "Oh, I only talk to it," and I started doing that as well and describing my
Sure.
what I want to work on with my writing partner. Um, Man, I mean, it comes out so different. It comes
It
out of
uses a different part of the
me,
brain. Yeah.
and I
But you
get
ever
much
notice that
different
people could speak,
response.
yeah, people speak colloquially, but often write very formally,
Yeah.
even academic, right?
Yes.
That's a disconnect. They're using two different parts of their brain. One of the things I would argue that's important is to try and get those things joined. But you're right. It's always important to shift the medium if you're not being successful, right? And
Hmm.
different people learn different ways. I mean, I make audio podcasts because some folks would like to listen to facts and ideas. I'm a reader. Like, my preferred way to learn is on the Kindle. I read very, very quickly, faster than I can listen. And so, I prefer to learn that way. And some people need video, and some people need to be hands-on. Like, these are all different mechanisms. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
with 4.0, when ChatGPT went multimodal, and now it was audio and video as well as text, it just opened the door to the way that other people perceive more effectively. So they think the
Hmm.
tool got better, and really the just tool came to where you were.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why, boy, my head's going all over the place here
Mhm.
because there's all these connections between different things. When I think about how I'm using the tool and then I connect it to my training, my martial arts training, when I'm talking to the tool and I want to get out a feeling and I
Mhm.
share tons of stuff and it says, of course it comes back. It says, great, I love that. Oh, that sounds so blah, 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 wonderful, wonderful. Um, and there's things that I cannot yet articulate that I can just get out of
Mhm.
me. Then it starts asking me questions that start to make me think differently. And I have to start answering them a little bit more specifically. And then if we spin too much and it starts to degrade, then I have to go in and very clearly, say, no, do this. No, we need to
Yeah.
stop now, or now stop asking me questions and just do this.
Yeah.
Right? Because
And
that's what it
it's
wants to
one of
do.
the recognizing that this is the tool's purpose, is to keep you engaged. Like,
Yes.
uh, right now, while we're not really paying the full cost of what these tools do, one of the things that OpenAI and Anthropic and so forth, when they talk to their investors, they talk about engagement time, right?
Mm-hmm, hmm.
These companies are highly incented to keep you engaged because it convinces their investors to keep the money flowing.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
the tool's literally tailored to keep going, which is why you literally have to cut it off. I've
Yeah.
pitted two agents one writing code and one writing the test for me, and they will always criticize each other constantly. They will until it's just like, nope, that's close enough, guys. Let's go. Right?
Like two
It does what
bickering
it needs to do.
children. Yeah, yeah,
Totally. But
yeah.
it's what's the incentive for the company to be like that? Well, those are all tokens, which eventually I'd have to pay for.
Yeah. I,
And it's engagement, which is what their real metric is these days.
I think that's what's important to understand. I mean, just learning that years ago about Spotify, that they didn't really care about the content and the music and the
No,
artists and all that. It was about keeping you on the platform.
listen
But
time.
it is completely that. And once you do that, you understand that it shifts your relationship
Yeah.
to what you're doing, and it's
Well,
frustrating.
it's why the obsequiousness exists. The obsequiousness is to keep you engaged,
Mm-hmm,
and it
mm-hmm.
works.
Yep. And then also the idea that we're keeping things open so everyone can get kind of used to it, addicted to it,
Yeah.
and then the tokens come in, which is what happened with some of the platforms I was on, and they want to charge you more now for the tokens
Yeah.
because you've gotten used to using the service. And I think understanding that is helpful. I think I have a lot
Hmm.
of creatives that are asking, or people that run teams or working on things within within their companies, trying to decide where to start, where to put their energy,
Yeah.
what to invest in. And right now, the most that I can really share is the flexibility of understanding the system, understanding what your needs are, and being able to work through the tools as they're being worked on, and be able to take that, like you were saying, take that process and that knowledge and be able to use it on different platforms as they shift, right?
Well, and also expect a return for your efforts, right? Like in some ways, keeping this cheap is undermining the need for good training materials, for strong
Mm.
guidance and so forth, for insisting on value. So
Mhm.
as you know, part of the engineer part of me can't wait for the bubble to end so we can start working on efficiency, start
Yeah.
working on effective utilization, because all of that becomes more important when the real costs have to be paid.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about then, let's move into creatives. Well, because I'm focused on creatives, but it's
Sure.
anybody, is jobs, losing jobs, and people's
Yeah.
fear around that is
Mm.
wanting to go in and we've talked about what AI is. We know people are, we didn't really talk about the anthropomorphizing it and as heavily, but people know that that's happening, where
Sure.
they want to make it more human than it is and
Yeah, and
smarter
we
than it is.
use human terms towards it, but we do that for all kinds of products, right? Like people
Right.
like the faces on their cars, and they talk to their car when they start it. Even though it's not listening, we
Yeah.
won't argue. You talk to your pet, and that's also questionable behavior in some respects. Uh, the talking, and listen, I've yelled at computers for a long time. Like I have menaced a computer with a screwdriver. Like I know how to use this. Don't make me.
It's how we
Uh,
relate. It's our human
yeah.
side,
It
right?
is, and
Right?
again, I think it's a superpower. The anthropologists talk
Yeah.
to us about the fact that when this when our brains evolved to a point to project intent on the prey, we were able to hunt better,
Ah,
right? Like
yeah,
that
yeah,
became,
yeah,
and the downside to doing that was low, right?
yep,
Just same with pareidolia, like this tendency for us to see faces where faces everywhere, because if you're the first to see the face of the thing hunting you, you're the one who's the furthest ahead when the hunter comes out,
yep,
right? And if you're
yep.
wrong, well, everybody laughs, but nobody dies. So there's no downside to doing that. And so now we're oversensitized to seeing faces
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
point where, we see faces on a hill on Mars. So, these traits now are being exploited with these tools to
yeah.
give the credibility the tool doesn't deserve.
Yeah. And that's what I want to talk about too, is that so there's that side of there's real fear people have of losing their jobs, right? There
Yes.
the
And it's
fear,
also is happening, right?
yeah,
And to be clear, AI hasn't fired anybody. People fire people.
right,
They may use
right.
AI as an excuse, but they've used all kinds of things for excuses for layoffs for years.
Yeah.
Is it, and those are real jobs and people are really being harmed. But is this actually going to happen en masse? That's a great question. Like there doesn't seem to be much evidence of that. And historically, we have seen that when automation comes in and creates and disrupts a workflow, look at what happened to travel agents as the internet took over travel. Right? The
Yeah.
number of travel agents went down dramatically, not to none, but a far fewer. But the amount of travel went through the roof when people could craft their own experiences and have more control over things. And so
Hmm.
total employment in travel is now in orders of magnitude more than it was before the internet. Same, with the classic Luddites who smashed up the automated milling machines.
Yeah.
And again, they were absolutely being disrupted by these machines. But the consequence of that automation was to make cloth production so much cheaper that it made fashion even possible.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
that, most people had two sets of clothes, the ones you worked in, the ones you went to church in.
Yeah.
Now you can have lots of clothes because it made it a lot cheaper. So when we compare that with this disruption, it's where is the value positions on these things? So what does make a difference?
Yeah.
So this current wave of AI, because there's been a number of them, which starts in the early 2010s, started with image recognition, right? The ImageNet competition and so forth, and which now is a feature we just take for granted.
Okay.
One of the areas that it immediately impacted was radiology, so medical imaging. And in fact, in 2016, Professor Jeffrey Hinton went on record saying, like, you should never be a radiologist. This industry is over. It makes no sense. And there's like 700, the FDA certified 700 different models for doing recognition of medical imaging, for detecting cancers and masses and all those sorts of things. But the reality is that the demand for radiologists has only gone up. Radiologists now work faster with these tools. It's an automation tool. It increases their power. And what's really happened is that doctors have recognized that they can get more patients to get imaging where they would normally not even try. Because it used to take so long to get an MRI or to get a PET scan and have a radiologist even have cycles to do it. But now with the radiologists being empowered by these tools, they're able to move faster. And so demand for imaging has gone up 3 times in the past few years. And the number of radiologists has gone up very little, not so much because of Hinton's statements, but because it takes a while to train radiologists. Like, it's just not that fast process, right? Like, real work is not 100% elastic. It takes time to create those things.
And also has the cost gone down?
Yes. Right. Like, and well, although there's still shortages, so you still got a constrained resource. So the demand's gone up. So prices are holding their own, but it does cost less because it does take less time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whether they lower the price is another separate issue to that. And it speaks to what other markets are going to be expanded by these automation tools. Like in software, we're talking about what programs are just not getting written because the barrier to entry is too high. And now this barrier to entry is going to be lower.
Yeah. And that's where we get into, like, in the creative realm, image generation, all kinds of design and video and music generation, where suddenly everyone can make all this stuff really fast, really cheap. And we get the AI slop being slapped on everything and saying everything's AI slop, because all these people can come in and create things, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we were just watching a video with Neil deGrasse Tyson on the Diary of a CEO. And the first thing he was saying in that is that AI will up the game for people who say they are creative, meaning that it's so easy for people to create that, to stand out and be different. And you basically have to move up the chain. It's like you're saying with the radiologists. You can move faster.
Yeah.
You can, but being really good and standing out, and cutting through the noise of all of that other stuff.
Well,
I
it's
don't know
also
what.
recognizing that a lot of this generated stuff is just not that original.
Right.
Right. So we already see this in the maker communities today, that, you can buy cheap stuff from China all day long, but a handmade thing is worth more. Right. That, yeah, I can buy a jar of pickles. I can also make a jar of pickles. Like, that truly created things have an intrinsic value. It's only when those things are scarce that they get valued. Right. We never cared about attention until attention became scarce. Right. There's so much demands on it. And so one of the things that's happening with this wave of automation is that real creativity is more scarce. Automated generation is not that creative. It's just generation. And so we're going to have an eye for more creative things. We're going to care about them more. We're going to value them more. It doesn't mean it isn't disrupted in the meantime. And if you've gotten into a place where you have a signature look that can be repeated over and over again, that's going to be a challenging thing. But, we're also going to find out, I believe, that, real creativity doesn't happen that often, actually. That's
Yeah.
okay, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But but inspiration happens once in a while, and most things are derivative. And now the tools
Right.
are going to be good at doing more derivations.
Yeah. And that's what we were talking about in terms of the creative realm is amplification, right? It's
Mhm.
like being able to take, like for me personally, working with AI has helped me amplify or dig into and research with myself what I stand for, what I believe in, who do I want to be out in the world, as opposed to just creating a bunch of stuff and throwing it out there. But through working with my own GPTs that I built, I was able to really, because I've done a lot of this work in my martial arts training, therapy, and lots of, decades of this kind of, self-responsibility work of,
Sure.
of digging into my center and who I am. I have found that ChatGPT has helped me work with myself on reflecting some things back to me and deciding what I want to rise to the top, and then be able to use tools to try things. I've definitely tried a bunch of things that weren't great, and I still do, but but it's helped
We
me
never
iterate
learn by
faster.
succeeding, right? We
Right.
learn by failing, by
Yeah.
trying things and saying, okay, well, that didn't work for me. Like, where do we go from there?
Yeah. It's helped me iterate a lot more. And when I was putting this through my own chat GPT and talking about amplification, it brought up some lanes that I thought were interesting. I'm going to bring them up here because they didn't come from me specifically, but I did agree with them. Like it can help you amplify thinking, amplify iteration, amplify learning. And then it said as an option, amplify strategy. And I was like, an option like that's
Hmm,
what it has helped me do. And
sure.
I'm curious what you think about those and how you see AI working well. Like how see how people are using AI while staying in the driver's seat, and not
Yeah.
giving up their power to it.
Well, I think part of this is knowing what the tool is actually good at, which is working from a known set of information. So, if you like the Covey, 7 habits pattern, well, that pattern's well known by an LLM. So you can take a current problem space and feed it that you're working on and say, how does this relate to the 7 habits? Like
Yeah.
and see if the tool can't conjoin those two things well. Like taking two vague ideas to try to press against the software is not going to go that well. Taking your particular problem space against a known set of problems, the tool will often be more detailed
Yeah.
working through all of those options. So there's
Hmm.
definitely strategies where that can help you to get an insight. But in the
Yeah.
end, the goal is to get the insight to you. The software doesn't have the insight. You know,
Yeah.
when computers first appeared in the culture, back in the 60s and 70s, you already had the problem immediately of, well, the computer says. So it must be true. And it's like, pretty sure people put that in there, and sometimes people are wrong. As a consultant, I would say, listen, these computers are only amplifiers. They can amplify your intelligence, they can amplify your stupidity. Which would you like? And
Love that.
so here we have another tool like that,
Yeah.
where you are presuming intent from human information being collected together in a model. Uh, there wasn't any intent. It's just a model, and it may or may not be accurate. Long before the LLMs are around, when AI was already a term, we talked about bias in data, and
Yeah.
not that there was never any unbiased data, just that you needed to know the bias. One of the
Yeah.
downsides of the strategy that's been used so far for LLMs is they've really not accounted for bias.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And part of that is this land grab, this bubble. One of the many efficiencies we need to get back to is I would like to rebuild some of these models with a lot more sensitivity to the quality of data being fed to them, to the bias in the data that's fed to them.
Yeah.
They don't need to be this large. They're just
Yeah.
not incented to be smaller right now. And they don't need to have, garbage in, garbage out is an old term in computing. And there's a whole lot of garbage that's gone into these things. So not surprising, some garbage coming out.
Yeah. So we all have to work on our personal filters a lot more. Like I actually see like this is a place where we have to get even stronger and clearer It's just like when you become a manager, a leader, a business owner, if you want better things from your team, you've got to get better at defining what you want them to do and what you're asking of them, right? And I,
Your values show through inevitably, right?
mhm.
And again, when I'm talking to developers, it's like make the thing you're proud of. Your values are going to show in the software you create, and that these tools again are just amplifiers of your values. They
Mhm.
don't come with values. They will reflect anything you care to put into it. You know, this issue around ChatGPT psychosis is really, I have taken a personality quirk and using this tool amplified it into a mental health crisis.
Wow.
But
Wow.
all it did was amplify it. The thing was there.
Yeah.
You just made it bigger rather than smaller. And so it is for all of the utilization of these tools. They're
Mhm.
just amplifiers.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, your value system is going to matter a lot as you head down the path of using them because they will amplify those problems.
Yeah. That sums it up right there. I think where
Yeah.
I wanted to go with this. Is there any last things, because of the time that we have here? Um, what should we, what do you want to see people like us as creative leaders focus on around AI right now?
You know, one of the things that creative people are really good at is grabbing different viewpoints. You know, when you brainstorm, you literally take the adversarial role and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
These tools respond really usefully when you turn tables on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, asking the tool to write a prompt for you for it. You know, asking its perception of you. Like
Yeah.
all of those reversal plays do two things that I think are useful. The first is they remind you these are only tools and that they're not an entity per se,
Yeah.
and they have no intent, and they broaden your thinking about how to interact with them.
Yeah.
What you're really doing when you play those reversal games with the tool is honing in on what your real intent is for the tool
Mm-hmm.
so that you can get better results from it. Stop. Uh, don't let it oracleize. Don't let it feel like it has any answers. It doesn't, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
really about you crafting a sufficient message to get to the results you need.
Yeah. It's really about not giving your power away to it.
Yeah,
Wow.
without a doubt.
Yeah. Thank you. I could talk so much more about this, although I know that we're you've been talking for a long time even before this one. But thank you so much for
Oh, my
talking through
pleasure.
this and sharing this. I think
The
it's
tea has kept me
useful.
together, so we're doing all right.
Good.